what's going on, Los Angeles? Welcome to another episode of the Rams Skinny here on the LAFB network, the Rams LAFB YouTube channel, and anywhere you get your podcasts. And of course, LAFBnetwork.com, where it all ties in all together. Thank you, as always, for making us a part of your day. Talking all things Rams football after I'd say it was a football game. I wouldn't call it a super exciting game, but a 13-9 win over city rival Los Angeles Chargers. We're going to get all into that. Things we saw, things we need to look forward to in the future and whatnot. But first, let me welcome in, as always, my better half, the man, the myth, the legend, Skinny T. What's up, my man? How you doing? How was the weekend?
It was great, man. We're getting ever closer to football, and there's a different feeling in the air for us and probably everybody watching when there's actual things happen, and then there's football of consequence within a few days, really. I mean, if you look at the college football, there's one game on the 24th, I think.
Yeah, Notre Dame, right? Over in
No,
Ireland?
they're not playing that early. It's like
Okay.
something like Florida State, Texas A&M, or something like that.
Okay. Yeah, you're right. But yeah, I just know because USC plays the 1st and UCLA plays the 31st. So we're 2 weeks away from that. But yeah, I mean, football is here. Fall is in the air. My daughter, first day of school today ever.
Wow.
TK started today. That was an interesting. Yeah, today was just a weird feeling. Like we dropped her off, come home, and I mean, I still have to work. Obviously, my wife's like, I don't know what to do now. Like, I'm like,
Oh my gosh.
The world is your oyster now. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah, weird. She's getting so big. Just about 4 years, or coming up on 5 years old here, I suppose, in a few months.
4.5. Yeah,
Wow.
4.5. So she started school.
Flying.
So school means football is back. I'm ready for the weather to cool down. It's real hot out here and where me and you are, but it's nice. It's sunny. We can't complain. So, but Rams fans, hopefully not a lot to complain about. First and foremost, Matthew Stafford progressing back. You did an article today, so I'll let you comment on it, but still having tightness, but as McVay said, arrow pointing up, right?
Yes. Arrow pointing up on Stafford. Back at practice, just doing the no drills, just kind of the walkthrough portion, stretching and individual stuff. So not back completely, which we're all in favor of letting the old man rest his weary bones and ligaments and muscles for as long as he needs to, up until week 1.
Yeah.
Because there's a precarious situation waiting for week 1 if Stafford can't go. Jimmy Garoppolo not starting. Stetson Bennett looking better in week 2. Not multiple interceptions, multiple turnovers, but not the four he had in week 1.
Yeah. I mean, we asked for improvement, and I guess there was improvement. Yes, good that Stafford's tracking better. He's obviously earned it, and it's not like we need to see him in training camp anymore. Like, he's good, knows the system, has some chemistry. I just wish when I played ball back in high school, I could just go to my coach, like, get a little thigh tightness. Can I take a week off? Like, he's like, no, you fight through that. But he's obviously earned it. Super Bowl champ, soon to be MVP, and you can make that bet at betonline.ag. Use promo code BELIEVE. Tell them the guys the Rams LAFB sent you. We like that bet. Rams over under 8.5 wins. We like that as well. Take the over. Just think a lot of people are doubting this Rams team, but yeah. So betonline.ag is where you can do all that. One of our sponsors, one of our good friends. Tell them the guys, tell we sent you. So, but yeah, first and foremost, Stafford trending back. So it doesn't seem like there is any indication that he will not be a full go week 1. Do you expect next week for them to kind of ramp him back up, as that is now game week practice next week?
I mean, yeah, Sean McVay basically said, we've got plenty of time. We're in no hurry at this point. We've got 2.5 weeks before our first game. So I think, I don't think he needs to go through necessarily exactly all of the grueling work necessarily. I think for him, it's mostly above the shoulders at this point in his career.
Yeah.
And, there's a question, will he have the same kind of chemistry that Stetson Bennett has with a guy like Jordan Whittington or Xavier Smith? Those guys we'll talk about more. But really this is week 1, and every team is heading into this into week one with these kinds of concerns in their back pocket. So, I think the above the neck work shouldn't put any stress on that hammy.
No, I don't think so. So, maybe the team that's the most similar and also most concerned was the team they played on Saturday, which would be the Chargers, who Justin Herbert was back at. Not that we're going to get into it, but Justin Herbert was back at practice today after he's been in a walking boot with plantar fasciitis. And, we were kind of joking before we started that, Stetson Bennett, which we're going to get into, but it doesn't seem as dire as the Chargers backup room with Easton Stick, Max Duggan, who they released today, their former 7th round pick out of TCU. And then they have Luis Perez also of the UFL. So as dire as it may kind of look a little bit with mistakes, at least with Stetson Bennett, it still is a little better than what the Chargers got going. If Justin Herbert is not able to go week 1 or week 2, or that thing flares up later in the season, the Chargers may be in a real hurt spot. I mean, Rams might have trade capital at that point for the Chargers.
Yeah, maybe you're right. We're friends with all sorts of fan bases, and seeing those Charger people just pining for a backup quarterback like Stetson Bennett was funny. And I think that I'll ask you this, I feel like a lot of Rams fans came out of that game feeling really, really good about where Stetson Bennett sits from your vantage point. Do you think that he's made that kind of leap and that kind of jump into, okay, we can put the ball in his hands any given Sunday, and he's going to be able to operate the offense at a level that they'll keep him in whatever game he has to play in?
Yeah, I mean, the first drive got me real excited. Obviously it was a scripted first drive, but they're going up against, I believe it was 8 of the 11 starters on the Chargers defense. If I was counting correctly, the only 3 not playing were Bosa, Mack, and Derwin James, and all other 8 defenders on the field are slated to be starters for that defense. And so they were able to drive all the way down the field. Obviously had to stall at the end there and settled for a field goal, but got points, operated the offense well, looked real confident in play call and play design, and the throws he made, I thought looked good. So that got me really excited. It was the up and downness from then on, but it definitely isn't, where he's at in his career. The fact, as we said last week, as long as we see improvement in week 2 and then see improvement in week 3, I'll feel good about it. So that's what I do. I think he had an overall, I would say, a good performance. It wasn't putrid like what the Chargers put up. I think going up against the Rams 2, 3s, and 4s, and they were not still able to get in the end zone and 9 points or whatever. So haven't scored a touchdown yet in this preseason, I believe, for the Chargers. So it's not that. And obviously Jimmy G, when back, will be the guy, which, again, we're talking about backups here. So this isn't like what the season's going to be defined by, but you want to have a semblance of security, especially when we're talking about a quarterback in Matthew Stafford that is not a concern, but has not practiced for 3 days until today and has tightness, and at his age is going to get bumps and bruises. So you want to have some semblance of competence behind him. And I think in his second full game of action, in my opinion, I think Stetson Bennett showed that it's trending that way. I wouldn't say it's there yet. It's still, a work in progress. But if you think about it, he's essentially played his 4th total NFL game after playing 3, not even full games, but playing a few quarters last preseason, then missing, and now being back for 2 full games. So, I mean, in that sense, it's trending better. So, but what was your takeaway?
Yeah, no, I'm probably pretty aligned with you. I was thinking about this in terms of watching Caleb Williams play, which my criticism of him was that, he's making plays out of pocket, off platform, and that's all very exciting. But I started thinking about the director, David Mamet, who his instructions to actors are hit your mark and say your line. And that's what I want to see more of from Stetson Bennett. I do like the out of the platform stuff. I do like that he can make the throw down the field to JJ Lapp with 2 A's in his name. Because that's a throw that Jimmy Garoppolo hasn't proven he can make. In quite some time, and missed a big throw in the Super Bowl that looked a lot like that. So I just want, he seems more comfortable outside of the pocket. And we've seen quarterbacks be wildly successful playing like that, like Russell Wilson.
Mhm.
If that's the ceiling, that's great. But to me, I feel like specifically Shanahan, McVay kind of coaches want their quarterbacks to, hit their mark, say your line, get
Yeah.
things out on time. I'm designing these plays for you. When Jordan Whittington's out there, he's making those plays in space because that's created by the offense for him to just be wide open like that.
Yeah.
So those plays are out there, and he's missing some of those occasionally. So I'm not 100% on him. I'm not waving the flag that to cut Jimmy Garoppolo. Now we found the guy. But some good things to see.
Yeah, that's been the biggest head scratching kind of, I don't know if you call it roster building, but just in McVay and Snead's decision making in the backup quarterback is they've never, I'm trying to think back, like I really don't think they've ever had a backup that was aligned in play style to the starter. Like, I mean, Jimmy, like Walford was very different than Jared Goff, right? And obviously
Yeah.
he was here too with Stafford, and um, they've never like really had that, and that's you. And you see that a lot. Sometimes you're just taking what you can get. Like, okay, this is the most talented guy that can be backup. Like, we'll make it work. But to me, it makes sense. You want a guy that plays the exact same style as your starter. So similar to how the Rams built their running back room now, to where if whether it's Corum or Kyron, you're calling the same plays because they can do the same thing as good. The backup's never going to do the same thing as good as the starter, but if he at least that's his skill set, the game plan will never change regardless who's in there. And it seems like always in this whole McVay era, correct me if I'm forgetting someone, but they've always had a backup that was a very different style quarterback than either Goff or Stafford. And Bennett is kind of that way too. I mean, he can do stuff in the pocket. We've seen at Georgia, but to what you just said, so far his time in the pros, which has just been preseason action, but his best moments have been off platform, off script, evading pressure. It's not been the dialed up play call because he hasn't been able to hit that. And that's the bread and butter of the McVay offense is we're not seeing Stafford run around. It's drop back, do your reads, your progressions, find the open guy and hit it. And that hasn't been Bennett's strong point. That wasn't John Walford's strong point. That you could argue, again, it was for 3 games, but that wasn't Carson Wentz's strong point. Any of these guys. So it's just really an interesting thing of why, like, I always think of obviously a huge drop off, but if you remember Peyton Manning in Indy, his backup like even looked like him half the time. Like you think of Jim Sorgi, you think they were awful. So I mean it's not a great example because they were really really bad, but literally like looked in terms of size, like how they ran, the face mask they wore, like it was a spitting image of Manning because they were like, we need to run the same offense. We're not going to change it. So anyway, I'm
Yeah, I
tangent
mean,
done.
with Walford and those guys, I know that McVay always liked that they could run the scout team, so that if
This
they
is
were
true.
facing a mobile quarterback, that the defense may be more prepared. But I think about an article that I wrote earlier this year about them going after Sam Howell, or maybe not going after him, but they were really interested in trading for
Yeah.
Sam Howell with Washington. Yeah, that's another one of those guys. The backup I think of is probably the closest to any starter that they've had was Blake Bortles that
Yeah.
one year, which
Yeah.
that was early in my LAFB days, and got in a little bit of an argument with our good buddy Chauncey Talese there about about Bortles being the perfect backup quarterback. He started and won some games, and I'm not saying he's anybody special, but that's probably McVay's best backup. I can't remember who preceded him, but I
He
mean,
had like Sean Mannion for some
yeah,
time. Like that may
yeah,
have been before that. We're deep in preseason when we've gotten 15 minutes of just backup quarterback talk. But it's so true. But this is why, and then we'll move on. This is why you and I think we're so big on Spencer Rattler in the draft because he didn't. When did he end up? Did he end up going not till the 5th round? Is that when he got taken by the Saints?
it sounds right. Yeah,
It was like later than even we thought because we thought it was going to have to be like 3rd round.
third. Yeah,
Um, I'll look it up when you're talking or something. But he can do stuff. I didn't watch a ton of his college film, but I watched enough. Like he could do stuff off platform, like he had that skill set, but he was a really good pocket passer with a great arm talent. Like his ceiling was his arm talent inside the pocket. And all indications are, not all indications, I should say there's some murmurs that he's like challenging Derek Carr for that starting role. Like he's having a really good camp. Not saying that's going to happen, but there's been like chatter about that. And that, if that was here behind Stafford for 3 years, like that would get me really excited about the potential heir apparent, a guy that fits the system, that plays just like Matthew Stafford with the same skill set. Instead, we're talking about a guy that, like, does he feel good being QB3 and can he stay in the pocket when you need him to?
Yeah, no. And I mean, QB evaluations are just, anybody that thinks they're good at them, they should be making a lot of money. They should be.
They shouldn't
be tweeting or Xing, their life away. They should be working for a team if you're that good at evaluating quarterbacks. But we were both high on Rattler.
And he was a 5th round pick.
Yeah. And, I like being right. It's not the end all be all for me, but if he ends up being a starting quarterback for the Saints by the end of the year, I might take a little bit of a victory lap. Speaking of victory laps, our score predictions for this last game, we were pretty close.
Yeah. Well, the final was 13-9. I predicted 14-10, and yours was 14-13.
I was 13-12.
13-12.
Yeah.
So yeah, pretty dang close.
Yeah.
Who would have taken, if we were betting, you would have won that because I would have been over with my 14.
I don't know how all the rules work, and I don't know what the spread of this game was, but if there is even preseason spreads. But
let's move on.
That's neither here nor there. It's just a quick little victory lap for ourselves.
There you go. Every now and then you need those, right?
The stopwatch is right a couple of times a day.
Yeah, that's right. At least twice, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk. So Bennett, we agree overall good performance. Good to see improvement. We assume he'll play all of game 3 again. He should, I think. We need to see another full game of him, but good to see improvement.
He was pulled last year out of the third game because in 10 dropbacks he threw 2 interceptions, and they were like, I think we've seen enough.
Yeah.
So I think this year that might be a little bit different. Hopefully,
we'll see. I mean, he's at 5 picks already for the preseason, so let's see if we can go through next game with none. That'd be nice.
Yeah.
Let's. What do you want to do? Stick with offense or jump over to defense?
Let's stick with offense. I think it's time the myth of Ryan Wendell is growing before our eyes. Rams new offensive line coordinator, has been here for 2 seasons. What a phenomenal job he's done. Logan Bruss looking good. A couple of rookies. What's that?
I said gorgeous. Sorry.
Gorgeous. I thought you called him a fortress. I was like, I love that.
Played like a fortress. That's great. Yeah.
A couple of rookies having really great preseasons. Bo Limmer and Justin Dedich playing a lot of center and a lot of right guard, I believe, and doing a bang up job. They are not credited with any pressures allowed so far this season, and these are rookies, and this is the backup, and they're keeping Stetson Bennett really clean. Just 5 pressures. We were expecting a bit more to come from this Chargers defense, but you always wonder with these kinds of things if it's a chicken or the egg. And Dallas wasn't putting up much of a fight. I didn't feel like in that game, but we thought the Chargers would, and they were facing off against some proven NFL pass rushers, and they were keeping Stetson Bennett clean. Yeah,
I mean, like we said, kind of at the top of the show, right? Like only 3 of the starting 11 Chargers defenders didn't play. 2 of those obviously are their star pass rushers in Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack. But I mean, on the offensive line, they were Tui Pelotu is like a big part of that defense. He played a lot of this game. And, Puna Ford is a big guy in the middle. I think he played like 7 total snaps, but it was out there in the very beginning of the game, among others. And I think this offensive line really reacted well. Scott Matlock, another guy that's going to get a lot of playing time for this Chargers team. Bud Dupree, a veteran. Morgan Fox, a veteran, all played in this game. And little to no pressures were given up by this Rams 5. And, we saw, I think from the top down, all guys look pretty good. Even, adding Connor McDermott played 26 snaps, who they added from, I guess not from the Patriots, played for the Patriots last year, but added him just, 2 weeks ago in camp. And you mentioned the rookies and Warren McClendon. And, I think it's just really encouraging that the development that we're getting out of Wendell, and B, in their draft process. Cause now you look at, and Wendell, there's a scout team for this, but the position coaches usually have some say and stuff in drafting their position guys they like, and they've obviously done their research. And so you look at the course of the last 2 years, who they've drafted and how they developed. And obviously this year being very quickly, it's only been, a few months. But as you mentioned, Bo Limmer and others, and undrafted free agent Justin Dedich, and just their draft process on the offensive line has looked really, really good. In years past, when maybe the starting five was good, the backups were abysmal, and you just had to pray they made it through healthy all season long. And luckily they did for most years. But now it's starting to look like, there's some good depth there, which is encouraging as you go into the slog of the season. So great stuff from Wendell and the offensive line.
Well, and to your point, I mean, but guys like Bud Dupree and Tui Pelotu were playing in that first drive when Stetson Bennett led them down the field to get a
his
field
best
goal.
Drive, arguably
his best drive, against some guys that are the ones. So really, really encouraged by that kind of thing. Bo Limmer second or in front of Joe Alt in terms of his run blocking grade from PFF. So was he sixth round pick, I believe, Bo Limmer, and beating out the 5th overall pick in terms of grading, which, we always like to caveat PFF's grades, not always fully the whole
not
story,
the
but
yeah.
In terms of run blocking, it's really hard to know exactly, how well a player is doing. But anyway, that's my point.
Yeah, no, it's great. And, pass blocking even better, an 83 grade. He got in pass blocking, 75 overall, 3rd highest graded Ram offensively on this team. So, really, really solid, and played 50 snaps. So it wasn't like he played 7 snaps and got those good grades, like 50 snaps, and had great output in all of those snaps, 29 dropbacks, 21 runs. So really solid stuff from Bo Limmer, as you mentioned, the 6th round pick. So, I mean, it's just really encouraging to see where this offensive line is, especially 2 weeks ago before the preseason started, just in training camp. You have your 3 starters go down. And, we said it, many others said it, like, this is supposed to be the highlight of this team. They spent the most money on the offensive line for big name players. This was supposed to be the thing we didn't have to ever talk about. The offensive line was going to be a top 5 unit, going to be great. You lose 3. It wasn't panic mode yet. It was early, but it's like, okay, they signed Jonah Jackson, who had injury history. Like, what is this a foreshadowing of things to come? And now, again, it's preseason, but still, with all the backups in, it's like, maybe this is the best unit. You have these top tier guys at the starting 5, but now you have a lot of depth too. So, I mean, just really encouraging. I mean, if there's anything in this team, any theme. So last year, our theme was better than expected. I think so far, the theme's got to just be encouraging. I mean, the defense, which we're going to get to in a minute, lights out again. And the offensive line depth has been great.
Yeah, no. And, you're looking at, Steve Avila is going to be there for a long time. Kevin Dotson and Jonah Jackson are still, not up there in age. People are talking about Alaric Jackson in terms of can they upgrade at that position. But, I mean, then you look at Rob Havenstein, who's in his 10th season. He's been, mostly healthy, but you're looking at 14 games last year played, 15, 2021, 16 in 2020. That was all of them back then, 9 and 19. So, I mean, I'm not worried about him, but he does get dinged up occasionally. And so there are positions that they will need to fill in the near foreseeable future. Not saying this year, but depth is great, and this is what makes this Rams team truly special, is their ability to find these guys, the Dediches, the 6th rounders, the 5th rounders, Puka Nacua, undrafted free agent Xavier Smith, Jordan Whittington, another late rounder. So this is what makes this team really great rooting for.
Yeah. And so just last caveat before we go to defense, because I know we've been real high on Justin Dedich, and we said last week of all the UDFA's, specifically offensively, we think he's got the best shot to make it. And when you look at roster construction, Bo Limmer also a center. So I think many would say like, well, you're not going to keep three centers, which I don't disagree with. But Justin Dedich gives you a lot of versatility, as I've mentioned. I don't want to keep reiterating, but he played every position in college on the offensive line. His 2 years ago played guard, started at guard every single game, and then last year started at center every single game for the first time. So they could keep him as a guard backup, versatile to both those positions. So for anyone listening saying like, oh yeah, he's been good, but there's no way they keep three, and Bo Limmer obviously has been better, and he was the draft pick, they could still keep Dedich as that versatile, can play kind of anywhere on the offensive line, specifically at the NFL level, just be inside, but can do guard or center. So anyway, just wanted to throw it out there because yes, I agree. I don't think they keep three quote unquote centers, but you want guys that can play everywhere.
Certainly.
Yeah. So last thing about the offense, just got to give him a shout out. Nikola Kalinic, highest graded Ram in offense, only 21 snaps, but still 91 offensive grade. So touche.
That's nice.
Anyone named Nikolic is a friend of mine.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna shout out my guy from last year, my ram of the camp, my ram of 23 camp, Xavier Smith, had a great game. Not just as a receiver, he got 5 passes for 45 yards, but he also added another 9 as a rusher, and he picked up the Rams' longest punt return since 2021 of 36 yards. Which isn't great. Even that, it's not like he took it to the house or anything like that. But this is something they've been looking for since they were trotting Cooper Kupp out there not that long ago to return punts. I don't know if you remember that, but
yeah, that was not that long ago.
Just a few years ago. Just another guy to look at. We were talking 6 or 7 receivers are they going to keep on the 53-man roster, and if it's 7, he makes this roster for sure.
So I know your answer, but I'll just ask you before we move on. If it comes down to Xavier Smith or Tutu Atwell, who are you keeping, and then who do you think the Rams are keeping?
I think Tutu is going to be on this roster. If I'm Les Snead, I'm moving on from Tutu. I'm gonna try to find a trade partner. I dropped the Miami Dolphins they love speed. Can they add another speedy guy in there? Who knows? I don't know if the trade value is of any note, but they'll pick up a 6th and 7th round or something like they could do that. But I'm done with the Tutu Atwell experiment. I like the guy, but I just like you look at what Xavier Smith did in this game. This kind of versatility might not look like that in the regular season, but there's he's a Brandon Powell kind of a guy. Yeah, and I like Brandon Powell a lot when he was a Ram.
That was your guy.
And now he's doing good work too. I don't remember what team he's with or what exactly he did, but he's some good statistics recently.
Yeah, he was with Minnesota last year. I can't remember if I think he's still there. But he had some good stuff with Minnesota. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, if they only keep 6 receivers, because I think we all agree. Obviously Puka, Cooper, and Robinson are your 1, 2, and 3, and then probably Whittington and Johnson, whatever order you want to put, or 4 and 5, in our opinion. And then 6 is kind of that Griffin or Tutu Atwell. Some people might say Atwell's 4, which based on draft stock, I could see that, but I just haven't seen anything that proves that should be the case. He hasn't played at all preseason, so that usually indicates that he's kind of a lock to stay, because if you're not going to play a guy like that, that means he's of starting quality. Usually everyone playing is fighting for spots. The only other thing I could think of why they're not playing is because they want to sneak him through the waivers. And if he does have a blowout game in preseason, then he'll get snatched up. But he's been in the league for 3 years, so I think teams have seen enough. If they want him, it doesn't matter if he plays in preseason or not. So based on that, I think it's safe to say he'll make this roster. But if they only keep 6 and he's the 6th, and they don't keep Xavier because of that. To me, that's a mistake. But
Mm.
I'm not the head coach of the Rams, so McVay's done a lot smarter things than me. But to me, I think Xavier has shown everyone that he adds value at multiple facets of the game that we just haven't seen from Tutu. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
we've always been rooting for the guy, but this is year 4 now. We still haven't seen anything. So
Yeah, and they tried to give him an opportunity and he lost his job. I mean, it's just the way it is. It's the cut and dry. And I've said it before. I'll say it again. 53 people on the roster. Each one of them has to have a well defined role. What are you offering? What are you bringing to this team? And I have a hard time answering that question or answering that question for Atwell. And there's a clearer answer for Xavier Smith to me. Last note I'll say on the offense is two running backs in that game both got a little banged up. Both came back. Both in terms of, I haven't heard anything to the contrary, but just something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, definitely. Boston Scott and Zach Evans, the two backs again that played last week and this week, both pretty efficient games, but both got banged up. So, so that I assume that means those two guys are fighting for that 4th spot. And obviously Corum and Kyron are locks, and Ronnie Rivers looks like a lock for RB3. So there's no way they keep 5 running backs. So I think it's between those two, and they both have looked pretty good each week. Boston Scott both weeks I think has had the higher average per rush, and they obviously signed him in free agency. So financial wise, he's probably more likely to make it, but it wasn't for some huge contract. So we'll see. And I feel like Evans, they could get through to waivers since they just drafted him last year. Didn't play at all, hardly last year. I feel like they could sneak him through the waivers, where Scott's more of a known commodity that some team might be desperate for special teams and snatch him up.
Yeah. No, I think that's absolutely right.
So, all right, we'll go into the defense yet again, looking solid with the backups. Let's just start with Omar Speights. This dude's making the roster, right? This dude is making the 53-man roster.
Yeah, I mean it's between he and Hummel, and I mean Hummel's not having a bad camp either.
Yeah,
I mean I think they're both playing pretty lights out. Spates is putting some highlights on out there for everybody. So I mean, I'm rooting for him. I got nothing against Jake Hummel. If they could keep 5, I would hope that they would keep all of them. But yeah, he's just making one heck of a splash out there on special teams, which they absolutely need guys like that. But on the other hand, Hummel made some pretty spectacular plays last year in the regular season on special teams as well. So I think it's a tough one. And again, just talking about the waiver wire, a guy gets cut on the 27th. He's got to go through all 31 teams that can choose to pick him up or not pick him up. And he's got that highlight reel that you were talking about. So I think there are some teams out there with which in the league right now, linebacker depth is at a premium.
Yeah.
So I if they do cut him, I don't know if he makes it through the waiver wire.
So. Well, I agree. I think he's flashed too much to sneak through. Like that undrafted free agent tag only works if you've done like nothing on film for the rest of the world to see. Like you could have a great camp, but if the rest of the teams don't know that, then you can sneak through. But this is now back-to-back games where he's flashed and had some highlight reel plays and some big hits, and he's at the right place at the right time. We know his college pedigree, what he's been able to do in college, and probably should have been drafted, to be honest. So based on what he did at LSU and whatnot in years past. So yeah, I can't see with what he's done him not making the roster. I just feel like he needs to be on this team, but Hummel too. To your point, has shown some really good things, and he's been on the team for a few years and has flashed really well and played good special teams last year. So it feels like both them make it, and they might go lighter maybe in the secondary, whereas in years past they've kept 10 or 11 DBs.
Yeah,
maybe they just go 9 this year to stack up more, which feels silly to keep that many linebackers. But if they're able to do that on special teams, I mean, you're getting your money's worth out of it, right?
Yeah, definitely. And he's a guy that can offer some, obviously some a big impact in the special teams. And you think about guys like, Trey Tomlinson, you're not getting that kind of effect out of, the 5'9", 185 pounder on special teams. So
Yeah.
I mean, the one curious one to me is, Troy Reader's not playing. Is he the Tutu Atwell of the linebackers? Is he the one that, he was slated to start in 2021, I think,
Mm-hmm.
and then ended up getting beat out by Ernest Jones, and went on to a different team, and he's kind of been bouncing all over the place. But they obviously see something that they like in him, so I don't know.
Yeah, I know fans.
Go
Huh?
ahead. August 27th is when all this is going to get shaken out, which is not far away.
Not far away. So one more preseason game that all comes crashing down after that. Yeah, I mean, you look at that room, and Jones and Roseboom are obviously your locks. Hummel and Spates have played a lot. Fadukasi, who you have said has had a really good camp. He's had an up and down preseason, but had a really good camp.
Yeah.
And then you have Elias Neal and Troy Reader, and yeah, I don't expect them keeping more than 4. But as we just talked about, is this a situation where they keep 5? Because of what Spates and Hummel have been able to do in this preseason, that you don't want to lose them. But Troy Reader, he was a Ram and on the Super Bowl team, then was with the Chargers last year. I don't know if he's ever been a guy that I'm like, I can't let go. Yeah. But obviously he's not playing again, similar to Tutu Atwell. Does that mean that he's a lock to make it? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it brings up this kind of thing that, it's an internet discussion for sure, where, does the preseason matter? And some people will say, no, they don't play any of their starters, but there's still plenty to be learned.
Yeah.
And, it's fun watching guys, and it's fun rooting for guys like Omar Spates, because they are undrafted, because their potential went unrecognized through 200 and how many ever picks. So I'm rooting for him, but at the end of the day, Troy Reader's played a lot of football, and
he has been in real regular season games.
Yeah, that's where I can just shrug my shoulders and say, hopefully they make the right decision. But Spates, I just don't think Spates is going to be around to be, on the practice squad or to be re-signed after waivers. So,
yeah. Ask Spates if the preseason matters.
Exactly. That's a great comeback for that kind of thinking.
Yeah, I would say preseason, everything matters but the score. But everything, right? I mean, you build your roster in the preseason. Those are the guys that you're going to rely on late in the season when those injuries happen. Like, it's extremely important. I don't care what the media says, and they're trying to get less preseason games. Coaches, we talked about. I won't go into a tangent. We talked about it last week, but I know coaches come out and say they get more value out of the joint practices because they can simulate exactly what they want and really design things to really get the situational football they want. That's not how games work. Can't simulate games. Like, you got to play the games. Preseason gives you a real life game situation and how you act upon it. So, one more thing I want to talk about, but is there any other defensive players you want to call out?
Oh yeah. Newly signed, Carlos Watkins led the team in pressures, huge strip sack, there in the second half. He wasn't going up against any of the ones, so I think he was outperforming even his own potential on that one. But you gotta give a shout out, and also we didn't realize Laurel Murchison was hurt when we were talking about Watkins in the last episode. So that could definitely a reason that Watkins was brought in. Laurel Murchison, obviously a guy to keep an eye out for, a guy that's played, starting football for the Rams and will definitely be doing in the mix in the rotation this year as well. So
yeah, no good shit out.
And I'm going to bring up Trey Tomlinson as well. Another big penalty that kept a drive alive that ended up going all the way down to the 1 yard line, where Easton Stick just couldn't handle a snap. It was not, the Rams didn't force that turnover, but Trey Tomlinson with another costly penalty. So he's kind of on my watch list of are they, still on a rookie contract, not long into his career, but is he a guy that has a place on this team with guys like, Josh Wallace, Tanner Engel, these are all guys that, and you think about the high end guys that they added, the Darius Williams, Jerry Jacobs probably ahead of him on the depth chart, Tre'Davious White and Quentin Lake, all, rising to the starting place, and he's just he's my Tutu Atwell on defense, and they're about the same size, so works out.
Yeah. Well, I think if my numbers are right, currently in the defensive back room, there's 20 guys. And
they usually keep 10.
10, I feel like, is the max you're keeping there. So there's 10 names, getting cut. And, when you look at your 4 or 5, we'll call them 5 starters, and Williams, Curl, Johnson, Tre'Davious White, and Quentin Lake, you got 5 spots after that. I think Russ Yeast is probably close to a lock. I think Jason Taylor's pretty close to a lock. Kobe Durant, I think, is up there. And
he's definitely ahead of Tomlinson.
Yeah. And then after that, I mean, you got Sean Jolly, Jerry Jacobs, who they added. Cameron Kinchins is probably a lock, just drafted.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're really looking at 2 spots between 12 guys. So, yeah, Tomlinson may be the obviously one of those 20 is Kendrick, who's on IR. So 19 guys. Yeah, it's an uphill battle for him. And, I'm not lightening what this means for him as a person and a player, but a 6th round pick. So not like it's a 2nd round guy that all of a sudden they're cutting in year 2. But he has a little uphill battle for him. So good shout out there. And we'll see. He'll probably play a lot in week 3, hopefully. And maybe we see some improvement because, Jim Thorpe Award winner at TCU. Want to see some of that. Nephew of the great LaDainian Tomlinson. So come on.
Yeah, such an interesting case because he's 5'9", but it's not a slot guy. He barely played any slot while at TCU.
Yeah,
always on the outside, and we've seen a guy that size, specifically Darius Williams, do just fine.
Yeah.
But Tomlinson he's a ball hawker. He's a physical guy, and just keeps getting penalties when he's out there, costly ones.
That was the big concern when they drafted him, was just is he too physical, too handsy? You can get away with that stuff in college and you just can't in the pros. And the thought was he's going to need to adjust his game to be able to be a lockdown corner, but not be too handsy and get penalties. And obviously, unfortunately, it hasn't translated and he gets those penalties. So that's the big blemish in his game right now, that, it's getting to the end of the rope, unfortunately, when you have that much depth. So yeah, we'll do that. But last thing I want to say, do you have anything else on player wise?
Nope.
Just want to give a shout out. Aubrey Pleasant, head coach all game, gets a win. He is the secondary coach, coaching this great depth in that room. But yeah, it was so cool to see him. And we knew going into this that McVay said he's going to be the head coach, but I thought it was really cool how McVay literally was like gone, like away, like just like, all right, this is your team for this game. You're in everything. He was just not even, it wasn't like he was in the booth with a headset, like talking. He probably did every now and then, but overall, this was Aubrey Pleasant's team. It was so cool to see how the team responded to him, how much love he got from his coaches, how much praise he got. And I thought he called a really good game and they got the win. So super, super kudos to Aubrey Pleasant.
Yeah, you could tell that he really was taking his role there that day just incredibly seriously. And he had some fun with it, with the red flag, the challenge flag. I don't know if you saw that. He was taunting McVay because McVay forgot his challenge flag, which tells you where his headspace is, because that guy's locked in on football. So he's not looking at these preseason games too terribly seriously, I guess. But I would say that the encouraging thing about his time in the booth that he spent with the phenomenal, they've really become my favorite trio of game callers, specifically because Mina Kimes is incredible at what she does. She's just phenomenal. Like what she says is smart. She talks about things that matter, and she leaves out a lot of the fluff, but she's also incredibly entertaining as well. So just quick shout out to her. But getting back to McVay is, he seemed uncomfortable in the booth. He didn't seem like truly settled, because so much of his focus was on the field.
Yeah.
And even when they did those kind of interstitials where he would talk to the booth people, he was on the field, so he was probably a little bit more in his element, so he didn't feel so much like a talking head. So I think maybe that experience showed that McVay will stick around as long as maybe not as long as we want, but for maybe he's not as tempted to hop into the booth so quickly.
Well, he said, and obviously he's not going to say anything wrong, but he said he's like, oh yeah, I'm no interest in being up here. I want to get back down on the field. Like they asked him what he thought. And I can't remember the exact phrase he said, but basically it was like, yeah, no, I don't have any interest in being here. It didn't help that his mic wasn't working at first. Like to say them on the fly, like that's why I love watching live broadcasting. Like then Mina had to give him her microphone because his wasn't working. So she was basically cut out of the segment, just had to sit there. Because his mic wasn't working. And every time because I remember at first when he was up there and one of the first questions I think Witt asked him, who Whitworth has transitioned fantastically into the media. Like he's so good. And McVay gave a 2-word answer. I'm like, that is so unlike McVay. Like usually it's this long, and I was like, what the heck? Like that's so bizarre. And then you realize oh, his mic just isn't working. Like it cut off. So
you hear the weird thump and a kerfuffle, and then
yeah. So, but I was like, that's not McVay. Like a 2-word answer, especially from responding to Witt, his former player. So yeah, quick on the fly action trying to get the mics working, but we've been there. We've all been there. It's good to see. It's good to see when ABC has that issue, not just LAFB. So
Yeah, well, and I discovered that the CBS was doing the Chargers call, and I watched ended up watching the Rams one the whole time. Last note, I'm going to say Josh Riccardi missed his first field goal of his professional career, a 52-yarder. So, definitely not a gimme. But the pristine shine has worn off a little bit. Not that I'm worried whatsoever.
Yeah.
Seems like great. And the best they've had in a long time. So.
Exactly. So yeah, I think it feels good to know there's no kicker debate. He's the guy going in, and when your only miss is a 52-yarder, you'll take it.
Still, Tanner Brown officially cut from the team as well.
Officially cut. And not to put any negatives because big Cardi guys now, Cardi in LA, but Cameron Dicker is still pretty good, right? 55-yarder, I think he hit. What could have been
hit a 58-yarder the game before. And in terms of an LA personality, that guy is just phenomenal. Not to talk about the Chargers anymore, but he's out on a golf course eating hot dogs. Saying that it's the thing that propels his
what did he call them? Pocket dogs?
Pocket dogs, yeah.
Pocket dogs, yeah. So great. A couple pocket dogs. So which could mean other things too, but to him it's just a hot dog. So
just a hot dog in your pocket.
Yeah, little pocket dogs on the golf course out at Pelican Hill. So well, that's a good way to end it. A good way to end the show. This is the Rams Skinny here on the LAFB Network. Thank you all for hanging out with us. We will be back before the final preseason game this weekend. So we'll be back later in the week to preview that. But thank you all for hanging out with us. If you haven't already, please go to Rams LAFB on YouTube. Hit that like, subscribe. If you're watching right now and haven't subscribed, please do that. It helps us out. And then you'll be updated every time we have a new show. We're going to start doing, as we talked about last episode, a lot more video content besides just our show. We'll do a lot more short form and just news and breaking stuff in video platform. Obviously, LAFBnetwork.com is where all of our content is, all of our Rams content. Plus, if you're a USC or UCLA fan, you can check that out over there. We will be, I'm just going to tease this, we will be launching the remaining LA sports soon as well. So all you Rams fans, I'm sure, are a lot of Dodger fans, Laker fans. We're bringing that all to you here very, very soon. I'm thrilled about that, but that'll be a little later. But at least, gets you in the mood to make sure you're subscribed and everything, so you're updated. And then obviously on podcasts, just search Rams Skinny anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, and you can find us there. But that's Skinny T. I'm Ryan Dyward. Thank you all. Be well. We'll talk to you here in a couple days.